Welcome. And before we begin, just to reconfirm the topic today that we're talking about is 10 things that you would like to consider or you consider when picking a content partner. And before I start, I would just like to do a short introduction. Ashutosh, reversing the usual trend, I'll start with you since you're in minority on the panel. Ashutosh here, a very important man for all of us. He's director marketing for LinkedIn, marketing solutions at LinkedIn. And would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
I have the mic here. So good afternoon, hello everybody. I head marketing solutions business for LinkedIn. So the way to think about it, LinkedIn solves three business needs for enterprises: hiring, which is a social recruitment; sell, which is using LinkedIn as a platform for social selling; and marketing, we're primarily working with all of you from brand perspective, how to leverage social data for your marketing needs. And that's the business unit I handle. And excited to be on this panel. Content marketing is what LinkedIn strongly believes in. In fact, we have, I think last couple of years, we term our platform as the largest publishing platform in the professional context. So content marketing is key for us, and so look forward for the discussions.
And Ellie, and before I ask you to give us a short introduction, one thing very interesting that I just learned about her, she's actually an anthropologist by education, and she's with us today here as country head for South Africa Tourism. Been in India for 4 years, so India veteran. Please tell us a little about yourself.
Yes, I think I have probably the easiest job of anybody here in the room. It's not terribly difficult to sell South Africa. We are a marketing organization that actually do not sell, so everything we do rests on content. And we have a really, really easy country to sell with lots of contents and lots of stories. We're very, very data-driven. We're very, very research-driven, which I think you're going to see from the discussion we have on the panel as well. And then just to add in there, 4 years in India. On Sunday, the blood is green.
Next on the panel, we have Kanika. Kanika has also been a very active DMAI member. We've had a couple of interactions during our conferences. She's heading marketing for Reebok and a very, very, I would say, accomplished marketer, has a long list of achievements behind her. Why don't you tell us something about that?
Thank you for the kind introduction. Yes, I'm Kanika. I'm the brand head for Reebok, and it's always exciting to be a part of these kind of conferences. As I look at it more like a ground for sharing ideas, and always go back feeling more inspired. So digital marketing is one of the verticals that I take care of, and I'm myself a big fan of content marketing. Reebok was one of the early adopters of content marketing, and which is why I'm here to share our experience with you all.
Thank you. So the way we'll go about it is that we'll start with a short, crisp sort of summary of what each of the panelists think about, the things that they consider, etc. And what are the main mandates that are behind those considerations. Then maybe have an interaction between the panelists, and of course any questions will then be opened to the audience here. Okay? So if I may, I'll begin with a little bit of what I took away from the topic, and something where I would like your small talk on. So like I also shared with you on the email, content marketing used to be a secret weapon. That some smart marketers were expected to be doing very well. But now it's actually the default setting for any effective brand engagement. And what this means for all of us is that it's having become almost like a commodity that needs to be out there. Marketers now need to start getting strategic about what's the content development strategy, what's their content marketing strategy, and from there also emanates the whole objective of being strategic about how they choose their content marketing partners. Yeah, and I think the right agency partner will give the marketers the solutions needed to manage their brand and connect with consumers in now, which is an increasingly social world. And this marketing platform now is a co-creation process. It's not the domain or the responsibility of the marketer alone, and therefore it becomes even more important this topic today to discuss and really come about and align and bring out questions of how do we go about selecting the right partner. Yeah. So, Kanika, should we start with you?
Sure. In the context of Reebok, content marketing for us is all about inspiring people. The reason being that Reebok is repositioned into a fitness brand, and fitness is something which is very personal. It is something which requires a person to feel motivated about bettering his life. Only then will a person actively participate in fitness. So if you look at competitors in our zone, they are mostly about sport and passion and watching a lot of sport over a cup of beer, etc. And yes, there is sport participation as well. But if you look at more active participation, that is where fitness comes in. If you look around yourself, you'll realize maybe you yourself and friends and family around you are waking up to different kinds of fitness activities. So be it a morning walk or joining the gym or going to a dance class, everybody is embracing fitness, and they have realized it is the means to a better life, to better health, and even to having a better environment around you for your family as well. So if you have to really motivate a person to take time out and eat better and give up on his butter chicken and devote time to really burning his calories out, the only way you can do it is if you choose inspiration over aspiration. And therefore for us, content marketing means doing a set of activities that inspire people to adopt a fitter lifestyle and to help us meet our larger brand objective of making Indians fit for life. So coming from that, there are two broad things that we focus on when it comes to content marketing. Number one being that we leverage our assets, be it our trainers or be it ambassadors like MS Dhoni, John Ibrahim, etc., to create content, and we use their face to make that content more popular. So because there's no point in creating lovely content and then it is sitting only on your computer till the time you haven't backed it with media money. And to go back to the point made in the earlier presentation where people ask about ROI on content marketing, it's very important that your content marketing is backed by least amount of your marketing budget. Only then will you be able to justify the brand pull that it will create while not making a big dent in your budget, not knowing where those KPIs are going. So we create a lot of interesting content on fitness. For example, how to get fit by doing a 7-minute workout every day, how to get fit by using the chair and the table in your office and doing a half-an-hour workout in your office and stuff like that. And this content is made more popular by putting a celebrity face to it, with the authenticity being brought in through a trainer, and the use of the celebrity platforms to basically give this whole content greater reach and drive it organically. So that's one aspect of content marketing, where the key point is that you need to have a technique where without parking a big pot of money, you are able to make that content reach to more and more people. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is where the engagement levels are higher. In an example, in the Reebok context would be our property called the Ultimate Fitness Fan, which is the biggest fitness competition in the country, and in fact the only fitness competition in the whole of Asia. Where not only people are coming together and they're competing in a really tough 3-month-long competition, but everything that they're doing is being converted into webisodes and is basically being put online for consumption. And that is beautiful, inspirational fitness content, where you actually have stories of a guy who had dengue fever, but still came and gave a fit test because he was so passionate. You have a beautiful story of an amputee who does not have one leg but actually runs every day and actually came and gave a fit test, which was a really tough one. So through all of these inspirational stories, which we don't find, but they come to us through a series of these initiatives, is what we turn into content which we hope can inspire people. So that's the two broad pillars of content marketing that I'd like to share.
How do you, you obviously go and develop this with some partners. How do you go looking for such partners who can develop such inspirational stories?
I think the first step is that you have to go outside the domain of your existing portfolio of agencies, because this typically requires somebody who can truly do out of the box thinking as well as have a fresh perspective on the brand. So while you must always allow your existing partners to pitch, but if you're looking at content marketing or movement marketing, like we call it, like we like to call it, you must look at partners outside your the regular people you work with. That's step one. Two, you need to see. I mean, I personally don't believe so much in seeing the past work, but what I like to see is the spirit and the passion with which the person is coming on the table. So the level of confidence and enthusiasm the person has in his ideas, the higher the probability that he'll be able to create something which, like I said, will be viral in nature and will have that emotional connect which can inspire others. So passion and freshness are two big points.
Ashutosh, you'd like to talk about this?
Yep, absolutely. So from a LinkedIn context, we are a platform, we are an enabler between a brand and the content agency. So we started this journey for content like 3 years back, and in India, when I joined LinkedIn around almost 2 years back, when we used to approach a lot of brands and marketeers about saying content marketing, there was interest, but there were two questions which I was always asked, or two kind of reactions. One, I don't have content, right? Two, I'm already doing too many things. How will I handle this? So these were the two questions which we started dealing with, and it was very important for us as an enabler to solve for these two questions. And that's where we started building an ecosystem of content partners. We started getting people who we, through our process, believe that they can write specific content for brands, and then marry it with the brands, right? So bring them together and let them talk and see if they can figure out a strategy which works for both of them. My two things which again I found while working in this process, and once we get them together, it was more silent for us. We would just take a backseat and let them talk. But two things I found is, which is true for any process, by the way, right? For marketing, when you start working with any agency, the most important thing when you outsource something is to see how the organizations fit together, right? So one of the biggest things I found with brands was there was no ownership of content, right? Sometimes it's used to sit in PR, sometimes it sits in digital marketing, right? And that's where it started, like, okay, who owns this? Who will give me a brief? Who will program manage this? Who will review it? So that was one. Second was just the core capability to create content, which I found we need to do a lot of work together as a community. LinkedIn, of course, we work with a lot of B2C brands, but our lion's share of business comes from B2B, and B2B content is very different in nature, right? So there, if I go to a financial services brand, the content writer has to be aware of regulatory environment, how to position, let's say, a financial services through a content, and based on the audience, right? A financial services content to a young audience is very different from somebody, let's say, who is a mid-aged professional. Their needs are different. So that's where it started getting complex, and I think that's where we realized these two gaps, one on the organizational side, and another was on the content capability to write the right set of content in the right context. I think we have made a lot of progress together as community. I think there are content agencies out there who can solve for it. But again, I think both these problems are still very much out there, and brands and content agencies are still trying to figure out what's the best way to work together.
So if I was to ask you, what would be your top two priorities looking for a content partner, what would you say?
So when we think of content partners, the top two things we look for is, of course, first validate the content creation capability, right? We look at the people who write content, we ask for samples, we talk to them, look at their background, because it's very important to get a good handle on their ability to express. And then we give them various contexts. So for example, we have found agencies who are very good at financial services, but they can't write tech content. So there has to be specialized skills to write each of these contents. Second, what we look is ability to scale, right? So brands, once they have figured out a way to work together, their demands increase, and that's where content agencies should be able to scale. I mean, you can have one freelancer writing content, but that will not scale, right? Do you have enough people in your agency or in your group who can scale this effort. So those are the two primary things we go with, and then of course we introduce them to brands, and then brands find their own fit with them.
And Ellie?
Well, I'm in a very lucky position. Globally, we work with both these two. So
Good.
I think the biggest challenge in content marketing is there's a huge difference between content marketing and content platform marketing. And I think that's where people fall flat. Very often I get people coming and going, oh, I'm going to write a Twitter campaign, and I'm going, Twitter is a platform. It's not content. It's a platform that we are using. And the two conversations, previously we used to say we talk content first, platform second. With the data available today, you really have to talk the two of them together, the access to information together. The opportunity of, specifically in our field, how close do I get to put people to my product? When you do talk about content creation, specifically for us then in tourism, it is who carries the most authority. When it comes to points 1 to 10, the checklist, we carry the authority. We are the National Tourism Board, and people believe everything that we say. When we have to talk about how absolutely spectacular the country is, which it is, by the way, we carry zero authority because we get seen as people to get paid to say that. So we have to understand what part is the content that we create and that we have to be incredibly careful on because it carries such a stamp of authority. And what is the content that we need the user to create? What is the content that if somebody else says it about us carries so much more weight? And we can't force that content. Consumers aren't stupid. We go to a stage now that even if we host bloggers in South Africa, we'll tell people up front, we hosted them and this is what we paid for. Because there's nothing as bad as a consumer kickback when they think they are reading an independent user review and then afterwards they realize that money changed hands or whatever. But it's understanding where that difference comes in. And if you look at things today, I don't know how many of you know the word Swoogle. You know, it used to be Google, and kudos to Google, it's in a room here. Today, as quickly as you need access to information, people now go onto Twitter and they say, I need this Twoogle, where do I find it? Because they want it right there and then. They don't want 30 options. They want people they know, people that follow that say to them, this is the best option. So it's also understanding how content has grown and merged and how the cycle of content works. For India specifically for us, you know, we know how the travel cycle works. People become aware of South Africa as a travel destination. We need to make sure that the stuff that they read about us, they like. They need to consider us as a holiday destination. Very often you know, okay, South Africa is a holiday destination. I think they're quite cool. You know, they've got lots of animals, they play cricket, they're nice people, but I'm not particularly interested in going. So do we have those hooks? And then can we actually convert? Is the quality of the content that we put out there good enough for people to travel? But you've got to understand how the cycle works, because when people are still thinking, oh, I'm going on a holiday, you are not coming with word-heavy content. Your content in that stage must be so visual. In India specific, when you look at English being the 4th most used language on Google and YouTube as a search term, for us as a destination to go out from a content point of view in English only, when people are still thinking about the destination or thinking about a holiday, it's completely stupid. You have to be in vernacular. When you search for the stuff that you enjoy, you search in your first language. Once people decide to go to South Africa, that content-heavy stuff can go into English. The rest of it has to go into vernacular. So the permutations keep coming, and if you don't keep track of them, you are not going to know how to build the content and where to put the content. Same thing for us. When we look at content partners, the content partners we look at in an awareness stage is vastly different to the content partners that we look at when we try and close transactions. And you've got to be at the right time, at the right place. You've got to be in the market in the specific thing when people are still dreaming about holidays, and in the market later on. So you need to understand exactly how that cycle works. I like your comment about inspiration and aspiration. We've turned it around in South Africa. Very often, we use aspiration to drive inspiration. And in India specifically, you know, lucky we have the Proteas. We will use a Dale Steyn. Young kids are aspiring to be Dale Steyn. Okay, so we use that aspiration for Dale Steyn to push the inspiration about South Africa. Same thing that we do with John T. Roach. So we do turn it around. As far as content partners are concerned, we tend to be, because of the volume of information we work with, we are not as quick off the mark as Reebok. We tend to work with partners for a long time because there's just so much information to distill. In South Africa, we have a proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go further, go together. So we tend to sign up our partners for longer periods of time and try to develop mutual content because it goes back to that user-generated content. At the end of the day, we do not want to own the content. At the end of the day, we want you to sit back and say, we didn't say that. Mrs. Singh that went to South Africa said that. So she carries a higher believer level on the experience side. I absolutely agree with you on content writers. It is probably the most difficult thing to find today, is to get people to be able to write content that has got fact, data, things you can use, as well as being able to tell a story. It is the scalability of it makes it incredibly expensive. And not only just the scalability in terms of how many times can you reuse it, but for how many platforms can you use it. We know that 70% of our web access in India comes off mobile. You cannot write the same for mobile than what you write for web. So the whole way you approach it becomes really, really difficult. Also the ability to create content for the right audiences. You know, the LinkedIn content for us, we use it extensively on my business. While when we work with the Reebok stuff, it is much younger, it is much funkier, it is much more for our action adventure stuff. Is how do you actually put the same content very often to the two different markets in two different ways that work for them.
So are there issues around what kind of client roster they have, or what's the kind of reputation that a particular partner may have? Do you also look for that when you go looking for a content partner? Are those considerations that also come in?
Not really. I think that the whole field of content marketing is so new that it's actually teeming with fresh talent. And with fresh talent, it's always difficult to pinpoint a finger on the previous work that they have done. So while, when we meet multiple agencies, what we realize is that they're typically digital marketing agencies who have now opened a content marketing wing and probably deployed 2 people fresh off the block to manage brands and their expectations. Now with this set of young people, yes, and I completely agree when you say that you need to check out their basic writing skill, and they need to be able to turn technical content, be it financial, IT, or technology, into the kind of content that people would love to read and not get bored reading. So I think, yes, you can put them through certain tests and identify that ability to work with. But I think you have to really go by your gut at the end of the day and support this, because this is so new. Maybe 5 years down the line, there'll be a set of 10 parameters on which you'll be able to judge a content marketer and make it like a simple tick-off process, like it is there's a norm, for example, when you're hunting for a creative agency, you give them a brief, the people come and they pitch to you, whatever you love, you kind of go with, and that's where you test credentials, what are the other clients the particular agency is handling, how many awards have they won in the previous, with the other clients. But how many awards even has a content marketing even gone through? They have not gone through the cycle of awards and recognitions as other agencies have. So really it is the power of the talent and your knack to identify that talent and support it is what will probably be, make a big difference.
Okay, thanks. One other thing that came through today while all 3 of you were talking about it was going with one partner or developing an ecosystem. So how does that differ? Are there specific stages in the development of a brand or development of a business that you would probably look for one partner and not an ecosystem, or would you look for an ecosystem of content partners? What would you say?
Yeah, so a lot of it comes back to your marketing objective, right? So as you rightly said, it's the distribution and the content tying back to marketing objectives are 2 different things. But once you have figured out the objective and once you have figured out the content you need for it, then it gets into a little bit of discussion around which partner can solve for which of these platforms, right? I'll give you examples. So, one of the things which we believe and which is, we say if you struggle with content, create one large piece of content, which we call it big rock content, right? And the analogy there is like, think of Thanksgiving, which is a US holiday. You buy this huge piece of turkey, but you can't eat it all in one day. And what you start doing is slicing and dicing it every day, turkey sandwiches, turkey soup. Think about content in the same way, right? create one large piece of content and then slicing and dicing it into smaller pieces, a video, an infographic, a blog, a tweet, a LinkedIn post, a Facebook post, right? And that's where when you start thinking of distribution is where it gets a little bit on the capability of a content partner. So what we have found is some partners are good at video but can't think about a post, right? And some of them can think one and cannot think another, right? And that's where clients have to actually spread out a little bit and find multiple partners to work with, which is difficult, right? This further complicates your ecosystem of partners and how you work with them. But it's the need of the hour right now. Till the agencies or the partners out there develop this full service capability to do all forms of content and think through it, I think it's a need of the hour and you will have to live with it. So those are the discussions, right? If you're just very focused on one type of content and one type of distribution, then yes, probably you can, or you find a partner who can deliver full service. Otherwise, you'll have to look at multiple partners.
And I think the ecosystem also gets complicated because the reach is no longer defined. So if you look at Facebook, they have changed their algorithm. So till the time you're not boosting your posts and you're purely relying on the organic reach, that reach is very less. Same goes for Instagram and Twitter. Till the time you don't reach a sizable number of followers, your content is not reaching out to a lot of people. Now, every brand can't have content viral enough to generate followers on Twitter and Instagram on its own. And people are smart enough to understand beyond a point branded versus non-branded content. So you also need, in that similar ecosystem, you need somebody who can basically get you the initial reach. And after that, of course, it goes organic. So which is another reason why this is slightly more complicated than vanilla digital marketing.
I think from a data available and from tech expertise, we split it in our offices. So we get the Geek Squad to come up and say, this is platform-wise, this is where you want to be, this is where your ROI is sitting, this is where your money is sitting. And they are not interested what the picture is, they are not interested, they are saying this is the return that you're looking at. So for us, that's a check and balance. When it comes to what we put on there, this is where you start dealing with multiple partners. And we put a base mark in. You would be surprised how many content writers we have that cannot spell. It drives me up the wall. There's basic requirements if you want to be a content marketer. Learn how to spell and learn proper punctuation. After that, it's really a matter of filtering through and finding somebody that gets your brand. Finding somebody that actually understands what is this thing that you're selling, and specifically for a destination. We're not selling a lion. We're not selling an elephant. We are selling something that is so intangible that if people don't get it, and we invest a lot of money once we find these partners to get them into the destination and get them to experience things. But if they don't get the brand, you're absolutely beating your head on a brick wall with this one. But for us, it works to split out the tech from the creative, because it just, there's an awful expression that the tech people use with the creatives when they sit in the room and the creatives go, oh, but this is so beautiful. And the tech guys do the sums and they go, no. And you can see that this is going to win an award, but it's not necessarily going to put the passenger in a seat to South Africa. And the tech guys tell them they need to kill the puppies. Because sometimes creatives have got great ideas and they are so passionate, they run you over with those ideas. But from a return point of view, it just doesn't add up. So it's that, for us, the tension is great. We prefer the tension in the office because it keeps everybody honest. At the end of the day, if you want to work in advertising or content marketing or communications, you have to understand that you're not a fine artist. You've signed up to do a commercial job, and you need to do it in a commercially viable way. So I have creatives that, they tend to get very carried away with, I'm going to win an award and paint a picture. You're in the commercial industry, and you must deliver on commercial standards.
Yep, all of us are. So, we've discussed a lot about what we look for. What are the things that are like red flags? What are the things that the moment there's a partner that comes into the pitch and you say, no, this is not going to cut the ice? Are there any such red flags that you...
Yeah. The first thing they say to you is, and we're going to create content for you that is viral. If you can define viral content, you're going to make an absolute fortune. Or we're going to duplicate this and people are going to go to Facebook and Twitter. It's like that old movie, Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. It doesn't work. Unless you take them there, they are not just going to go there. So people they've got a top layer right, but the mechanics at the bottom on how this thing actually gets to work at the end is completely missing. And it's frightening how many of those proposals come over your desk where they think just putting the tweet out or putting the Facebook page, the block out is just going to make it happen.
I'll just add to it. There are a lot of clients we have seen whose brief is, I don't care about anything, it should be viral. So let's put it the other way, right? Like a lot of times we say, I don't care what commercial objective, I want this to be viral, right? Yeah, so I completely agree with you. And those are the places where you start losing your key objectives, and that partnership will never work, because if somebody is promising you to deliver viral content, I would love to meet them, right? I would love to understand the science, because it's just not possible to predict that. So that's one. I think another thing is, I think the whole governance model, where again I would focus on when you work with partners, and not necessarily content partners, any agency is very important. So without naming the client, one of them started working with a content partner, but the governance model was just not there. Some very simple problems, like you said, spelling mistakes and punctuations, right? And the first knee-jerk reaction is, oh, let's find another content partner, right? Now, you can go on this journey forever, and especially in Indian context, as we are growing this ecosystem, it can be a long, long search process, but have you made the effort to, sit with them and make them understand what the requirement is, what the business is? And the last point there is, again, from a client perspective, if you are writing functional content, your functional experts have to be involved, right? It cannot be a one-way conversation with the agency through our marketing team. You need to get your functional experts to sit on the table and explain what they need, what the objective is, how to think about the topic. So those are the 2 or 3 things I have found, which are red flags.
Yeah, I think one of the red flags that we should be careful about is how short-term or long-term is the content that is being discussed. And I think it is in the best interest of the brand that you create hooks which can provide long-term benefit for the brand. So the question that you must ask yourself is that, is this idea just a flash in the pan? Is it something that is, that you'll park your efforts and your resources behind, and it is just going to create a storm for you and die out? Or is this idea that you can sustain for at least some period of time so that you are able to link that idea back to your other channels? I'm sure like a lot of brands, including ours and many others, they would, at the end of the day, love to have content marketing, which they can then use across other platforms which are not digital. So for example, if I create some beautiful inspirational content on fitness, I would love to put, and I would love to have some tags on my product lines and stores saying that, hey, if you're interested in dance, why don't you check out this lovely dance video by so-and-so dancer online? So the beauty of content creation will really be complete if in a very subtle way, in a non-digital environment, you can link that product back, which is possible only if there is some degree of thought put into the sustainability of that content. So I think one of the biggest red flags would be to avoid short-term or flash-in-the-pan kind of content. And the second would be, like nowadays there are, there are a multitude of agencies, or rather organizations like Scoop Whoop, Tuned Body, I'm sure all of you would have heard of them, that are just creating content and parking money behind populating that content and increasing its reach. This content is basically things that they've taken a take on some Bollywood story or something related to politics or something new across the world and so on. And increasingly, brand marketers are also sort of trying to associate with these organizations. Now, here is where we need to be careful, because you might end up doing content for the sake of going viral, like you guys said, but you might end up taking a risk where your content, your preferred content is lying in an environment which is unvalidated, because you don't know at the end of the day what sort of credible content is being created by a host of other organizations. I mean, I personally think those two companies are doing a wonderful job and they're actually paving the way. But as a brand, you need to be careful that the environment in which your content is hosted, if it is in a bunch of other places where more people are coming to devour content, you should not reduce the credibility of your own content by simply putting it in the wrong environment for the sake of a larger reach. So those are two things.
Thanks. Should we open the house for questions if anybody has interesting comments or any interesting questions to ask? Most welcome. To our panelists, Nina.
There are many points of views of content. One is the point of view of a marketer who is sitting and giving a brief. The other is the point of view of a person who holds the idea and is trying to sell and communicate that. I have personally experienced severe dichotomy in when we are presenting content ideas to people, they're being received as advertising ideas by a marketer. They never use self-reference of content consumption. They put it on a platform of advertising evaluation. I have had, one of the brands is here, where I've had an engagement where the entire thing was, oh, amazing idea. How many videos will get viewed and how will you make sure it goes viral? We just spoke about viral, meaning something goes, you know it's gone viral after it's gone viral. Yet it's a very loosely used word, and it's one of the briefs that one of your agencies gives at the end of the day. How do you change that hat? How do you not become an advertiser? Because if you're engaged in content, you have to be a user. And theoretically, what everyone is saying up there is right, but practically, are you actually doing that?
Yeah, I'll try to answer that. So the first thing I want to say is that brands wanting to create content that can potentially go viral is not a bad thing. The reason being, at least because of that objective, they are attempting content marketing in the first place. If you tell a brand to create content and then you tell a brand that, okay, you have to park X monies to promote that content, that guy might just go back and say, I may as well put that money in product marketing through the digital world, so to say. So I think that while everyone here is right, that in all probability, it is very difficult to create content that can potentially go viral, and you'll never know till the time the campaign's launched the kind of reaction a public will give. But keeping that desire in the heart or the mind of a marketing person at least allows that guy to experiment with content marketing. And very frankly, if marketers had not had that ambition, this explosion which has happened in content marketing over the last couple of years would have not happened. And like any industry that goes through certain cycles, now is when people are realizing how tough it is to actually create content that can go viral. But in the last 2 years, they have also tasted the success which has come through the content creation and the consumer engagement and the so-called pull marketing. So what I would say is that it's a matter of time and space and the life cycle of the industry. Right now, people who are probably early adopters as brands may have realized that, okay, advertising metrics are not the way to measure content, and we simply need to see how well engaged the consumer is. Maybe this guy will turn into a brand loyalist a couple of years down the line. But those who are still experimenting with the idea of doing content, if they want to be ambitious, and they want to try and create content that they believe can potentially go viral, I think there's no harm in that. They are fueling the industry, which basically needs a push right now. So yes, it's a challenge for people who are creating content who will be held responsible. Hey, you said 1 million views, I did not get it. But at least the content got created and it would deliver some degree of success if it has any meat.
I also think it cuts both ways. We, for example, don't rate the success on content on a like or a view or whatever. We only rate it on interaction. And we do weigh it. We do weigh it that content has got a much higher cost of acquisition than any other advertising medium. So we do weigh it internally in our offices. The numbers game is an incredibly dangerous game to play in India, because if you want numbers, we can roll them out like that for you. And specifically in the industry we're in, where travel is high-end, we're a long-haul destination. So the argument builds for where you're going. But the flip of the argument is also true. If I'm going to pay you to create content and 5 people read it, why am I paying you? So somewhere down the line, you need to find what that medium is doing. And I mean, at the moment, we'll be all up in the air. I think most people have moved away, and have gone into interaction and have realized that your cost of acquisition is up. But there's also, I think, a larger responsibility on the content creators to create stuff that people read.
I just want to park another thought, and in front of us is a panel who are converts, who are not trendsetters, is consumption plays a very critical part in success of a content. Content is not only a video being created, but content is any interesting means of communication that is of value to the user, that creates engagement and interaction. Consumption is something that always gets missed because only consumed becomes content. Not consumed becomes blind spot, is not seen. And I've not heard anything about thoughts on consumption. It's only been from an expectation point of view. But from a consumption point of view, is there any thought there?
So just to add to it, like when we go into another layer of what you have said, consumption, but consumption by the right set of audience. Yeah. So at LinkedIn, because of the data we have, the targeting is you can target it to a level where you can really identify your audience and take the content to them, and that's where we ask the marketeers or the agency to focus on consumption, which gets difficult, right? I'll tell you why, because we have the ability to go down to a very, very specific set of audience, which might not be millions and millions, because that's not your audience, right? We take you to the audience which is very specific, and where all the standard metrics fail, right? You can't compare that consumption with other platforms. You can't compare that consumption with anything offline, but people do make those comparisons, right? And that becomes a very, very difficult kind of thing to handle. So I'm personally not answering your question, but like what I wanted to tell you is it's the right thing. Consumption is the most important thing. But I think Kanika also said, like interaction, engagement, those are the key metrics. But at LinkedIn, we believe if you can marry right audience to the context and to the right content, then you have a winning strategy, right? And that's what we try and help brands do, right? Take the right content to the right set of people at right time. Unfortunately, I'm on the next panel, but I'm gonna give you a preview of what I'm gonna speak. Is we think about funnel, and you need to marry that funnel to the content as well. Most of the time, the problem is, I'm ready to put our content there. I want to gate it right away. I want my consumer to tell me who you are before I can let you read my content. Maybe I, as a consumer, am not ready to engage with your brand. I don't know who you are, right? And what immediately happens? People bounce. They say no. And then the question is, what is the ROI? How many leads? Does it answer the commercial question? But you're fishing in the lower funnel when you have not even done anything on the upper funnel, right? So these are some of the real challenges which we face, and as Kanika rightly said, we need to give time for people to understand this and get mature about it.
Sorry, where it's great then to get that long-term relationship with the brand that you're working with. If we do a deep dive on LinkedIn, and my cost per person that I'm approaching on LinkedIn is suddenly sitting at 2,000% of any other advertising medium, I expect my conversion rate to be a hell of a lot higher than what I get on any other conversion rate. Which means then, if we are that convinced from a platform and a tech point of view that we're fishing in the right pool, you need to work with the same content providers all the way through so that you can get that. If you come in on your content and you get a 10% conversion on something that is costing you 5,000 times what anything else would cost you, your content's wrong. But then if you keep changing your content writers, your content providers, you never fix it because you just kind of, keep throwing.
Is it a content wrong, or is it, you're only measuring one part of what impact that content can have? So even though LinkedIn is a expensive cost per click, or however you want to do it, expensive, sorry, wrong word, but is up there. But you're right, if being up there, if it's conversion, if that's what you're after and it converts well enough, happy days.
Yeah.
But maybe it's not conversion, maybe it's just you need to be in front of the 5 CFOs in Delhi that you want to talk to, and you don't want to do it through knocking on the door. You want to put some opinions and thought leadership papers in front of them.
But then it wouldn't be on a conversion ROI.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's not a conversion. It's like, well.
Yeah, but it would be different content sets then.
Yeah.
There's certain content sets that we do for conversion
I
specifically.
think one of the things that also comes into picture is what is your objective? What's going to be your content marketing objective? And that should drive how you measure it. Rather than, bring the same old matrices to play and, try and calculate ROI. If the objective is conversion, then you have to figure out what's the best partner or what's the best platform.
And also the duration in which you measure it in. If we're in the awareness cycle of tourism, then I'm measuring the awareness cycle over a 3-year period, because you may learn about us now, but only travel in 3 years' time. Well, we're in the conversion one, we measure over 18 months. So it depends on where you sit on the cycle. You know, like the material would differ, so would that measurement differ.
And I'll just add to that because that's a really interesting point you made about consumption of content. And if it's not consumed, it's as good as not made. I firmly believe that any person choosing to adopt a content marketing strategy cannot do it till the time he does not supplement it with a profiling strategy and B, a media reach strategy. So he will need to have two more partners or maybe one person who will do all of it, who will also help to populate that content amongst the right people, as he said, and as well as give you the right reach strategy. Now, whether that means that you're boosting your posts on Facebook or you are basically placing your content in a paid format across sites that are heavily consumed by consumers or any other third thing. But I think you should do it the other way. You should have a media reach or media outreach strategy in place along with very well-defined profiling objectives and then make your content strategy. So one of the major components that when you start briefing your content is marketing partners is that you should have some idea of how will you make this content popular, make it reach out to more people, and who are you really targeting. And you should start with the premise that whatever you create, no matter how beautiful or how impactful, will probably not be organic. If it becomes organic, you go celebrate. But in case it doesn't, then you know exactly how you will make the right person read it in larger numbers.
Any other? Can we get the mic there, please?
I was just, it's like we all know that content is really changing things, changing the way, it's a whole new dimension that's being added to the marketing tactics, right? But it also is, on the other side, it also has the impact of, it impacts the brand in the sense that what you say, earlier we could say it in simple packaged advertising pieces which would go out, and that was our expression of the brand. But when you have a content piece going out and it's also engaging, the brand itself is getting a much thicker 2-3 layers that are coming up, which are now going to start defining what your brand is. Both, and it's being defined as much by the users as by you. So there are two kinds of content broadly that you might say. One is, tactical content, which is trying to get views and get impressions and get the awareness pieces in. The other piece will be the layers where you need to get enough engagement and impact people about your brand and get them to start feeling other textures about you. So now, actually, the question for this is, inside marketing companies, in fact, the biggest challenge, it is easier for content developers because there is a communication industry, there's a media industry. It's easier to produce the content. It's difficult for marketers to evaluate it. I have a feeling that I don't think that there are enough equipped people inside marketing companies to do it. And probably a lot of good content and a lot of good ideas and the promotions that they need to be done is not being done. You guys are good with product marketing, not with content. So maybe, how do you do it? So the question is, how do you do it? How are you evaluating? What are you doing to change inside your marketing organizations to have people who can help produce great content? It's an important part of your brand.
I'll take the first shot. So one interesting point you raised, and I think we all somehow missed it, is how content marketing is also helping your brand equity. So while it's driving conversion, engagement, and right profiling, etc., it is also building your brand equity in a beautiful way. I'll take one example here, and hopefully that will help to answer your question. If you look at FMCG marketing, FMCG marketing is something where you're more or less marketing the same thing year on year, season to season. Maybe there are a couple of variants in place, but we all know that it's more or less the same thing. And consistency is something that they thrive on. So if you look at Lux, we all know how Lux advertises. They will use the top Bollywood actress of the time and do the same advertising around her. She's in a tub, there are flowers and blah, blah, so beautiful. Lux has taken a content marketing approach, which pleasantly surprised me. They basically have something running purely on digital, which shows Katrina Kaif being shot by a photographer. And you keep thinking throughout that this is just a normal Lux ad, till the time the ad concludes and you actually realize, rather you're told, that the photographer was blind. And he was actually just clicking away pictures through the appeal of a fragrance. So yes, there is a product connect that came in at the end about soaps having lovely fragrances, but that was really very subtly planted. And that suddenly raised the brand equity of Lux to another level altogether. Because here was a brand that was not talking how what great chemicals are there in the soap and blah blah, but they were actually talking about certain softer aspects to beauty by taking this kind of a course. And I think that is what happens at a larger level. Beyond a point, we can sit in this room and debate for hours, but the industry is not mature enough to have well-defined matrix on the success of content marketing. But one thing which will happen for sure, that if you've got the right content, and it has touched consumers' hearts enough to make them consume it, then somewhere you have raised your brand equity to a much higher level than you could ever do through a television campaign, which is just very, vertical form of communication. Here, in a digital context, it's something beautiful you've created. It's one-on-one, horizontal style of communication. Your brand equity will go through the roof, and it will show on your engagement, on your brand equity surveys and other stuff that keeps happening through the year. So I hope that answers your question.
That answers a part of it. It's because that's still in your control, okay? And it's got to be done, which means it's your brand and you're expressing aspects of it, and you know how to execute those communications. How do you execute content which consumers want? That's what media is very good at. Broadcast media is very good at, but you need it too. Question mark is also, partly
Start acting like a publisher.
yes, how does a marketer also become the publisher, and do you need to at all?
I don't think so. I don't think a marketer needs the capacity to, needs to build the capacity to become a publisher for precisely the reason that you said, that broadcast media today has become very smart. So if you look at Zenga TV, what have they done? They've basically collated content, television content, and made YouTube channels on fitness, on love, on food, on shopping and mountaineering and stuff like that. So the industry has woken up to the content from the other side as well. So they're creators, they're marketers, and they're broadcasters. Yes, and publishers. And it's not just your traditional digital agencies and platforms that she spoke about. It is also independent organizations who are hosting this content and creating an existing reach for brands to come onto. And they are also fueling the growth. So Zenga TV is one example, and I'm missing the names, but there are 2-3 other people who are basically simply in the process of not creating, but providing platforms for distribution. Circle of Cricket is another.
So do you have an internal marketing team?
Me? Yes, I have an internal marketing team. That's true.
Loaded question, because I think it all depends on when content marketing becomes such an important part of your marketing mix that it's driving the majority of what you do, then I think you might rethink that view of, I don't want to act like a publisher anymore. Yeah. Because if we're not building ads and we're building content, it kind of, the whole process starts to morph and change. I think the outcome's the same. We're still trying to, connect with consumers, build our brands, build our market share. We're still trying to do the same things, but I think increasingly as things go more digital and less broadcast, more narrowcast, more digital, I think content is the glue to me that keeps that all together. So what we're seeing in certainly other markets is some brands taking a very extreme view where they're building their own internal teams, that they have their own editors, they have their own writers, they have their own videographers, they have their own whole media setup, and all of their marketing is done through content platforms rather than through ads. So if it gets to that point, then I think the structure of marketing departments is changing in some markets and maybe might as well in India.
Fair. Let me ask you one question. Do you think Coke Studio is content or is it advertising?
Who, sorry?
Coke Studio, have you heard of it?
As a marketer, what do you say? Because I use Coke Studio as an example. As we speak, we're engaged with Coke in a conversation. However, how do you perceive it?
Well, I think they've created great content, but at the end of the day, they went with partners to broadcast it. Be it a television channel or be it an online partner, they have, they needed somebody with a pre-existing reach to make that beautiful content reach to more people, and that's why Coke Studio is what it is.
So that's an afterthought. That's an afterthought. Ideally, it was as a user, as a viewer, it is pure content. And that's where we're bringing in consumption. I don't care. Coke is presenting it. Coke is not forcing me to carry a bottle of Coke, otherwise they're going to go black on the screen. For me, it's content. And that is what he's asking as well. That's what everyone's question is, that it's about consumption. It's about not becoming a publisher, but will you facilitate the appetite of the user, and will you be ready when the user has rapidly shifted his platform from television to digital? Is there enough 2-minute, 3-minute content ready today?
Mike, you wanted to say something? And then we'll do a quick wrap up because we're already running very late.
No, actually, I had two questions for Kanika. So the question that you just mentioned, that Coke was riding on this whole platform to get the reach. Why do we sign up celebrities? I'm
Okay.
coming to the point number 1 of yours, where you said that you sign up with a celebrity and you ride on their reach. So somewhere, and you mentioned that it is organic. So my question to you is that somewhere we are paying. Content doesn't come free. Somewhere or the other, you are trying to pay to the other person, right? So how do you justify that?
And absolutely, and I think that's the key question that any marketer needs to answer before they decide to put money on creating content. And they need to have a plan in place as to how will they promote and increase the outreach of this content in the first place. And you need to be clear whether it's a television partner or a broadcast or a digital partner that you have on board. So I think it's about, to answer your question in one word, I think it's about optimization. You need to create content which, after reaching its tipping point, will reach out to people on its own. So as a brand, through your partners, your responsibility is to let it reach the tipping point, after which it will continue to grow and evolve in its ecosystem. Only then will you get some measure of ROI. Otherwise, it'll become akin to a television campaign where you spend big money on first creating it and then making it popular with people. Similarly, you'll create content which will raise your brand equity, yes, in a much higher way, but you will still have to invest on making it reach more and more number of people. So here is where the quality of your content will play a huge role, and if it is something that can survive on its own after reaching a tipping point, that should be your goal. So yeah, optimization is what the marketer needs to consider.
Thanks, Kanika. If any of the panelists have any other comments to make, or I'll just quickly now summarize, if you're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, and I'll just quickly summarize the discussions. We came here to discuss what are the things that we are going to be looking for when we pick a content development partner, and I think the panel had some very diverse views to share. The ones that you mentioned, Kanika, was you'll be looking for a fresh perspective. You will open up your pitch to outside agencies, not just work with. So one of the things is fresh perspective, spirit and passion of the partner. Ecosystem, developing an ecosystem of content partners, but at the same time, what stage the brand is in and what's the marketing objective will define how many partners and whether it's one partner versus an ecosystem. Fitment,